Hi everyone, my name is Joshua and welcome to Northern Solar. In today's video we're going to be looking back at the production, consumption and all the financials for our solar panels here in Cheshire for the month of May 2023 as we continue to answer the question, are solar panels worth it? So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation. So this is our solar array. This is the front of the house. We have 4 kilowatt on the front of the house and 4 kilowatt on the back of the house. The house is east-west facing, so we've got panels on both sides, which gives us 8 kilowatts of solar power. We have a 6 kilowatt SolarEdge inverter with 13 kilowatt hours of Growatt battery storage. This is the graph for May 2023. As you can see, we've had some pretty amazing days, all the way up to almost 50 kilowatt hours in a day. The highest there was 49.4, we've had a few around that level. On average, we've had 34.7. The lowest down here was 13. We had a couple of low days where it was quite cloudy, but in general, yeah, around 35 seems to be the average, which gives us a total production for the whole of May of 1,077 kilowatt hours, which is a lot higher than I was expecting for this month. This is the production compared to each of the other months in the year and also compared to the last 2 months last year, as we now had the solar installed for over a year. If you want to see a video about my yearly review, I'll put a link up at the top and it will be on the channel as well if you're interested in catching up on the whole year review. So as you can see, May 2022 was a lot lower. We only had 903 kilowatt hours in total in May. So May 2023 has been a lot higher. We did see in April we were lower this year than last year, so it does look like it's a bit of a trade-off there. But on average last year 29.1 and 34.7. So whether that means this year's been a spectacularly sunny day, sunny May, or it's just normal and last year was worse, it's hard to tell, but maybe somewhere in between. But overall really happy, and the fact that May this year is also better than June last year is quite surprising from our side. We have had a lot of sunny days, so hopefully that'll continue through in June and we'll continue to produce a lot of solar electricity. I picked a random day in May, so this is the 20th of May, just so we can go through the production, how it looked. As you can see, starting around about 5 AM when the system wakes up and it's a nice sunny day, we do get a little bit of a shade on our panels on the east of the house at this time of year, as the sun rises behind some trees in the back. But as soon as we get to about 7:30, it starts to ramp up pretty quickly, and you can see we're getting all the way up to about nearly 5.5 kilowatts by lunchtime. A little bit of cloud in the afternoon as it slopes down towards the afternoon and the evening, and then tails off pretty quickly as the sun goes down. And by just after 8 o'clock, we are done for the day. But overall, yeah, really good sunny day on the 20th. Produced a lot of electricity there. So next we can look at the consumption on that same day to try to show you how the system, what happens during the day with the system, how we use the electricity in the house and how it's fed back to the grid and how it charges the battery and everything. So this green box behind is the percentage charge of the battery, so that's 100%. So overnight it doesn't really lose very much during this time of the year. We charge the car from the grid, which you'll see here, about 7 kilowatt roughly from the grid to charge the electric car overnight during our off-peak window. So you can see that load from the grid is in red. The purple here is the load on the property, and you can see here the sun starts to come up, and you'll see here that means that we're starting to charge the battery here as well. And once we have enough sun to charge the battery fully, we start to export to the grid, which is this blue block here. You'll see this blue block does start to slope up here, which is when we have more solar being generated than the battery can put into the battery at that time. So when the battery's really full, it can't charge itself at its fastest rate. So some of the power is going out to the grid because we're not using it. You can see these spikes here in consumption, so this will be the immersion heater clicking on. We do finally have an EDDI installed, but this day was before the installation, so this was just the immersion heater clicking on after we'd had showers and used hot water in the morning. So as you can see here, a couple of times the consumption on the house, the load on the house was actually higher than the amount of PV we were generating at that time. So you can see the battery does dip down slightly at that time, because we'll start to use some of the battery for this little section here. But then for the rest of the day, the load on the property is lower than what we are producing on the solar. So a couple of times we're using the solar energy directly, which is these purple spikes. The rest of these big blue blocks is the export to the grid. So on these sort of days we do export a lot to the grid. We are trying to use as much as possible with the EDDI and charging the electric car if it's sunny enough and we're at home, but generally we're out at work, so the car isn't there to get charged anyway. And as you can see, the battery stays pretty full all day. Sometimes if you use a little bit, down to like 98%, it won't bother trying to charge itself again. It just leaves itself at 98 rather than switching backwards and forwards, which is fine. Like, we've got plenty of battery, so there's not really, and plenty of solar as well, so there's not really any detriment there. The little dips here, we have a few cloudy spells in the afternoon. You can see the solar dips down, but there's still plenty to cover our very low usage while we're not actually in the house. And then in the evenings, as we have a little bit more usage, but actually not very much. So solar comes down. Maybe we're out for dinner this day, I'm not sure, but there's very, very little usage in the evening here. So the battery is able to cover everything we need, no problem at all. So that's a pretty average day at this time of year with this amount of sunshine. We're not really having to use much from the battery. The solar's covered everything we need, and we charge the car during the off-peak period overnight. So these are the financials and the figures for May 2023. So total solar production, we saw earlier, 1,077 kilowatt hours. We did export 768 of those to the grid, which was an awful lot actually. Was hoping to be able to utilise more of the solar, but when we're out at work all day, it's difficult to be able to utilise that. So that means we consumed 309 of those generated kilowatt hours, and we used 240 from the grid, 240.3, and as you can see, that's broken down into just 4.1 kilowatt hours from the grid during peak times, and 236.2 kilowatt hours, which was mostly charging the cars overnight. So our total consumption in the property was 549.3 kilowatt hours for the month of May. That gives us a 71.31% export and 28.69% consumption. So onto the financials, you can see standing charge for the electricity for the month, £14.67. That's the same with or without solar. The cost of our grid usage was £19.44. Again, it's a huge amount of off-peak usage, which is a really low rate of 7.5p currently on our OCTOPUS Go Faster tariff. So we assumed that if we didn't have solar, the same amount of electricity we would needed to buy from the grid would have cost us £117.63, giving a total electricity cost of £132.30, and our total electricity cost with the grid charging the car overnight and the standing charge is £34.11. We earned £31.49 from all of our export payments from the 768 units that went out to the grid. So we have a net electricity cost of £2.62. That compared to what the net electricity cost would have been for with no solar, £132.30, meant our monthly savings are £129.68, which to be honest is, again, as expected, similar to what we've been seeing already this year so far, around £130 saved in the month. Just a little one more chart here, we've got the breakdown of our complete usage. So you think of the total consumption in the property, so that's the 549.3 units that we consumed in the property. 56.26 of that percent of that was from solar. 43% was from the off-peak from the grid, which again is mostly charging the car, and the tiny little 4 kilowatt hours, which represents 0.74% of our usage, came from the grid during peak time. So we really are trying to minimise that peak time usage, and this month's been a great example of being able to do that with the solar and the battery. So this spreadsheet is available on a link in the description. It's starting to get a bit small and hard to read, so I'll try and zoom in on the sections that are relevant, but May 2023 is over here, which is just the details that we just saw on that screen, but when we put it in this one we can see the overall totals and the averages, percentage usage, exports and consumptions, as well as grid and off-peak grid and peak grid usage. So these sort of changed throughout the seasons. You can kind of see through the summer last year, mostly solar. As you're coming into autumn, you're starting to use more from the grid, which was charging the battery overnight from the off-peak tariff. And then through the winter, very, very little solar from December and January and February. And as you can see now, we're starting to get back more into that summer style, where we've had a little bit of spring months here where it's a bit more evenly split, and now the solar is taking over and we're relying much less on the battery. So yeah, overall, the total savings cumulative since the system was installed, £1,752.23, which is pretty good so far. As I say, if you want to look a little more closely in this, you can check out the link in the description, download your own copy and play around with it however you like. So now that we've got over a year's worth of data, we can start comparing what happened last year in May and what happened this year in May. So this is quite an interesting one, because last year we didn't generate anywhere near as much. We were over 100 kilowatt hours better this year, but we exported way more than we did this time last year in May. So May last year, the difference here was that we were both working from home all of the time, whereas now we're not working from home anywhere near as much. I'm not at home maybe once every couple of weeks, and my wife is here maybe 3 or 4 days a week. She's working from home, so our usage in the home during the day is a lot lower than it was last year. So as you can see, also the grid consumption, the consumption in the house is almost 100 kilowatt hours higher. Almost all of that is coming from the grid, because when we were both working from home, we weren't charging the electric car. Now I'm driving 500, 600, 700, 800 miles a month. We are charging the electric car every night, so our grid usage is a lot higher. Our peak grid usage is actually lower, but I'm sure that's probably mainly down to how we've optimized the system to try and use less during the day from the grid when we have to. But yeah, off-peak grid consumption was almost nothing for the month of May last year, because I imagine we probably didn't charge the car at all for the whole month, because we just were working at home most of the time. We didn't really go anywhere. So yeah, overall the splits for consumption and export, we were able to consume a lot more last year than we were this year, and exported a lot more this year than we did last year. And as you can see, last year you could put almost everything was used from the solar and battery, and almost nothing from the grid at all in that first in that month of May 2022. Whereas now, when we're using the off-peak grid power to charge the battery, you can see the split is a lot more even. Interestingly, the savings were higher last year because we didn't have very much cost from the electricity supply from the grid. We've had to buy electricity overnight. Even though it's cheap, it's you're still looking at about £15 worth of off-grid costs, grid costs overnight. So the difference here with 130 to 135, it's very similar, but there is a difference because we have had to bring in more from the grid to charge the car. So moving on, this is one that I was put in, is the payback calculation. It pretty much stays the same month to month now, because this one's built on a lot of assumptions which will change dependent on your usage patterns, your assumptions around energy pricing and inflation and everything. But if you want to play around with this, is the link, again, it's in the description, it's on one of the tabs in the spreadsheet. You can have a look how it works for you. I basically, I know now how much we're able to generate in a year. I know what the electricity costs are and the standing charges. My system cost £15,215.50 to install. And these are all kind of like percentages of what you expect the consumption to be and exports to be to and from the grid. Annual system degradation is estimated to be 0.5% a year in terms of the panel degradation. Annual inflation of electricity prices, I mean, put your finger in the air and guess at the moment, who knows, but 7% seems to be an industry average that gets talked about quite a lot. And then yeah, the assumptions around this is what usage, what you would be using from the grid at what times if you didn't have solar. It's really hard. It all depends on your pattern of usage in the property and how much you're able to consume of what you generate versus how much you can bring in from the grid. So putting all these numbers in, for us it came out at around about 8 years payback to make our money back on the system before we start like generating profit, should we say. But yeah, feel free to plug in your own numbers and see what comes out for you. So the Renault Zoe, this is the car that I use mostly for my commuting, so I've done 510 miles at an average of 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour according to the car. which was slightly higher than last month, but not as high as I was expecting. I think maybe using the air conditioning a little more. I was hoping maybe to be closer to 5 miles per kilowatt hour this month, but I think air conditioning does knock a few points off for you. So yeah, that works out at a total usage in the car of 113 kilowatt hours, and we pay 7.5 pence per unit to charge that in our off-peak period overnight. So our total charging cost was £8.47 for the Renault Zoe, which worked out at just under 17 pence a mile. I think it's rounded up there to 17 pence per mile. If we were assuming a petrol equivalent at 40 miles per gallon and the slightly lower this month price of £1.45 per litre of petrol, 510 miles would have cost £84.05. So saved in May £75.58. Lower than last month because I didn't do as many miles this month, but most definitely going to be doing more miles next month. I'll go more into that in the next video. But yeah, the more miles we do, the more miles we save. That's how it kind of works out with these. Again, staggeringly cheap cost to run a electric car when you're able to get that sort of efficiency in terms of miles per kilowatt hour and have a off-peak rate at that low. We have that off-peak rate until end of September, I think, this year, so it'll be interesting to see what the tariffs look like then. I'm sure they'll be higher than 7.5 pence overnight, but maybe hopefully not too much more than that. Yeah, big news for this month, as you probably saw on the thumbnail, is we finally got the MYENERGI EDDI installed in the house. So this on the left is the water tank, which is a 210 litre supercoil OSSO hot water tank, which is connected to the gas system boiler. So in the winter we can use the gas if we need to heat the hot water, because our central heating in the house is still gas heated radiators. So yeah, the MYENERGI EDDI sits in here, and I mean, if anyone doesn't know, basically it's just a smart switch. It detects with a CT clamp wrapped around the incoming supply to the house. It detects when your system is exporting to the grid, and instead of exporting to the grid, it turns on the immersion heater in the bottom of the tank and heats the hot water for you. So you save money by not having to heat that water from the grid during the day or using gas. So this is basically the how it looks at the moment. It's only been in for a few days, so we haven't really got any data yet, but for next month, the video that I do for June will have a full month's worth of data to go through, just see how much we saved by having the EDDI turn on automatically to heat hot water rather than using it from the battery or from the grid or from the gas. So it'll be an interesting one. I might even do a separate video about that one, because there's a lot of discussion. I've seen a few other videos from a couple of other YouTubers that do really good explanations of how it all works, but it's really down to your own sort of situation in terms of what rates you pay for your electricity during the day at or off peak, or what rates you pay for your gas. But for me, what I really like about it is that the hot water just automatically heats itself when the sun comes out. We're not having to rely on the grid at any point if there's sunny. We don't have to wait for our off-peak period to charge the hot water up and heat it. If the sun's out, we will always have hot water. So far, I mean, there's only two of us in the house, and the 210 litre tank is pretty massive, but it's a good sort of future-proofing for whatever comes along in the future. We will be able to heat 210 litres of water from the sun at this time of year. So it'd be interesting to see what time of year we stop being able to do that in terms of having excess from the grid. Maybe I'm probably similar to sort of September, October, before we're getting very much excess and not able to charge the battery, but we'll see how we get on. So yeah, that's something to look forward to in next month's video. So yeah, what I tend to do at the end of these videos, as you might well know, is give myself a little plug and say if anyone is considering switching to OCTOPUS, and obviously I do recommend OCTOPUS to anyone who's looking to get a smart tariff or a renewable energy tariff. If you are looking to switch over, please do consider using the link in the description, and you'll get £50 credit on your bill, and we'll also get £50 credit on our bill. So yeah, massive thank you to those who've already used the link. It really does help us here with our bills. And if you do switch over, please let me know like what sort of tariff you're going for, because I'm always interested to see what people are looking at. We've been looking at the data for the OCTOPUS Flux tariff, trying to figure out if it's worth it, but at the moment I don't think it would be, because of the amount of miles I'm going to be doing for work coming up, and having to charge that overnight at home. But it'll be an interesting one, and again possibly do another video about that once I've got more data. But at the moment we're getting such a cheap rate overnight, and the standing charge is still, well, it's still too high really, but it's lower than what it would be if we switch tariffs. So at the moment I think we're staying put, but we'll see how it goes through the summer, and whether it's worth switching over. But yeah, look out for that one in another video. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me just put myself back on the screen. Yeah, so as I said, that's pretty much it. Another great month in terms of solar production. Again, answering the question, are solar panels worth it? Again, as you're probably aware if you've watched a few of these videos, the answer is yes. For us, it is always yes. We are generating so much solar, even on days that aren't particularly sunny, we're generating enough to see us through the day in the house, saving money every month on our electricity bills, and now even saving money on our gas bill because we don't have to heat the hot water with a combi boiler. With the gas, we are using zero gas at the moment. We're only paying standing charge for the gas. So for me, it's been a huge positive having these solar panels, the battery, the EDDI, the electric car installed. As ever, please drop any comments or questions in the boxes below. If you have a system being installed, please let me know how you're getting on with it. Always like comparing and contrasting how other people's productions go in different parts of the country and even different parts of the world. How energy bills and stuff work in other parts of the world is always really interesting as well. Had some great discussions in the comments on previous videos, so please do let me know where you are and how you're getting on. But other than that, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.